makes sense to seek refuge in that logic. That's what people say when they've convinced themselves that their reasoning is airtight, when really it's just their emotional safety blanket. Check it. Logic feels safe because it's clean, it's structured, it makes chaos look like it's been put through an accounting software. But here's the question: are you actually finding clarity in logic? Or are you just hiding behind it because you are afraid of living in the mess? Now, logic itself is the bunker men run to when the world feels unpredictable. It's cause and effect. It's formulas. That is the illusion that if we stack enough facts, life will play fair. That's why they're saying like everything happens for a reason. It's spread because that in itself gives structure to uncertainty. But if you look at it, the Stoics believe in logos, a rational order, a cosmic logic. And for centuries, men found refuge in that. It made sense because if life is random, then pain is pointless. But if life is rational, then pain has a place. It makes sense to seek refuge in that logic. But it doesn't mean you have to camp there forever. Because if you look at it holistically, we realize that not all logic is real logic. Sometimes it's fear dressed up with a calculator. I don't date because relationships are too risky. I don't try new ventures because the odds are against me. I don't chase goals because the system is rigged. If you look at it again, on the surface, that sounds rational. In reality, it's just a man building walls out of statistics to justify standing still. It makes sense to seek refuge in that logic until you realize the logic is built on excuses, not evidence. Now, here's where it turns dangerous. Logic that once protected you can become the cage that keeps you trapped. Think about it from a business perspective. Some people analyze forever, take their time analyzing till their kingdom come. They analyze the markets, trend, risk. By the time they finish analyzing, the opportunity has moved on. Think about it from a relationship angle. You run a background checks in your head, overthink every detail. Meanwhile, the person who just jumped in is already living what you are still calculating. Too much logic kills momentum. And momentum is often what wins. Even history shows this. The Stoics found refuge in rational order, but they still acted, right? The Enlightenment thinkers put logic on a pedestal. Reason became religion, but even they realized logic couldn't explain everything, couldn't explain fate, art, or love, because chaos still had power. Check this out now. The modern man, we have got more information, more logic than any civilization in history, and yet we have more paralysis than ever before. Refuge in logic has always been tempting, but it's never been enough by itself. Now, let's look at it from a gym logic. You know the science already. You know calorie deficits, progressive overload, but some dudes spend 3 years watching YouTube videos on the optimal split instead of touching a weight. Refuge in logic, prison in inaction. From a dating perspective, let's look at dating logic. Some men build elaborate checklists, height, income, trauma scorecards. Meanwhile, the illogical guy who just asked her out is already married. Now, from a financial logic, you can spreadsheet your way to debt. It doesn't matter. But at some point, you have to invest. Sitting on cash because the markets are too risky. It's logical until inflation makes your money worthless. It makes sense to seek refuge in that logic. But refuge doesn't mean result. Because if we look at it from a masculinity perspective, we understand that masculinity thrives on clarity. We need logic to lead, to protect, to build, right? But here's the masculine mistake. Thinking logic replaces courage. Logic should be the compass. Courage is the legs that move. Because building a family, launching a business, or chasing purpose rarely makes sense on paper. It makes sense once you are already in motion. This is what I would do to use logic properly. I will use it to plan. I'm not going to use it to paralyze myself. No, I will use it to check my emotions, not just use it to silence them. I'll use it as a shield, not use it as a coffin, because logic is a tool, not a temple, not an escape hatch. So, yes, it makes sense to seek refuge in that logic. But don't mistake refuge for residence, because logic is your shelter, but courage is your weapon, and life requires both. I say this to say that you can start in logic, but at some point you must step into the fight. Because the truth is, logic may explain life, but it doesn't live it for you. That is on you all day, every day. I'll catch you in the next one.